Hello, everyone. NWE War Reports here with 6th of March 2023 frontline update for the Russo-Ukrainian War. As per usual, we are going to start with the Bakhmut area. The big news the other day was that central Bakhmut had fallen and Ukraine was retreating their troops from that area, allegedly setting up some kind of defensive line beyond the rail line and the rail yard that runs that virtually separates the center of Bakhmut from the far western part. So if you wanted to divide Bakhmut into three different particular areas, you would have Bakhmut east of the river. Sorry, I got a hair on my mouse. It tends to do funky shit. You got Bakhmut east of the river. So, this is the first part, eastern part. Then you have central Bakhmut here. And then you have the western parts of Bakhmut here. So, east and central are almost entirely virtually controlled by Russia now. So, at least 2/3 of Bakhmut, if not slightly more, because these districts are a bit larger. Some people are saying 80% of Bakhmut is controlled by the Russians. I honestly don't think that's the case. Main reason being, well, here we'll go ahead and just real quick edit this so we can click on Bakhmut name, just to show you guys where the outline of the city is. Those of you on mobile devices, I don't think you could see it that well, but the city's virtually outlined, in this area here. It doesn't look to me like this is 20%. This looks like a little bit more than 20% of the town, or at least 20%. So I guess you could say, perhaps like 75, 80% of the city is now controlled by Russian forces. So whatever it is, whatever that number is, it's pretty close. It's pretty close. So to give you guys an update on the newest changes in the front here, it seems like Ukraine is not fully evacuated from the center, but they're definitely working on that. They can't really do it overnight. Obviously, they have to conduct some kind of fighting retreat. You would have, say, different lines. You would have, say, your first echelon of defense here, and then you would have a second line of troops behind that, already set up in a defensive position. So when the first line retreats, they'll end up falling back, and then the second line is in place. I just kind of like, this is a lot of guesswork here, but what this would do is it would prevent, the retreating Ukrainian troops from getting overrun because there's already another defensive line. So I think in the next couple of days, probably 3 or 4 days from now, unless Ukraine really tries to hold on to both sides of the rail line, there are some larger structures here on the eastern side of the rail line. So it's possible they decide to defend those, but I think Ukraine's probably going to continue to fall back. So in terms of the changes in the front here, we have some Russian gains across this Rose Alley area, essentially capturing some of these high-rise buildings here to the north. So not a good development here, as this is one of the strong points that's left inside of Bakhmut. This entire area, there's a lot of high rises here. If Russia manages to capture all of this, it'll be pretty easy to breach through these residential housing neighborhoods comparatively. Like, obviously, not easy, but compared to these high rises, it'll be a cakewalk. So that this towards the north and towards the south are becoming the more dangerous positions for the Ukrainians, because the Russians are close to those fortified positions, and if they manage to take them over, then it's going to make Ukraine retreat back to this the central area right here. So in terms of the downtown area, Russia has managed to continue its advance, capturing more of the central blocks of the city. So these three central blocks to the north of the stadium, this has fallen into Russian hands, as well as some of the territory to the south as well. From what I've seen, this there's some sources saying this avant-garde stadium has fallen into Russian hands. There's some sources that are not. We know everything south of there has, so we'll go ahead and mark this. And then some of the territory to the south of the Hotel Bakhmut, including the Atlantic Hotel, have fallen into Russian hands. So we will go ahead and mark that as well. So that is the gains over the last 2 days inside of the central parts of Bakhmut for the Russian side. These are, Ukrainian losses, Russian gains. So, the situation in Bakhmut continues to get slightly worse daily. There's a lot of talk about Ukrainian counterattack. We haven't seen anything like that. We have some talk from NATO officials as well about potential Ukrainian counterattack. Still haven't seen anything to suggest that. I think it's possible if we start getting footage from the front of some of this newer NATO equipment, Stryker armored personnel carriers, as well as Bradley infantry fighting vehicles. That is the equipment that Ukraine's strike force is going to be using. So until we actually see that equipment on the front line, I'm skeptical that a counterattack is coming. On top of that, there's also an issue of the weather. I'll go ahead and show you guys a couple videos from the Telegram channel. But this is the trenches now inside of Bakhmut. Kind of makes me feel really bad for these guys. The soldiers on both sides, just like having to operate in the trenches. Not only are you, away from your families, you could possibly die at any given moment, but then you're dealing with these, absolutely awful conditions. This is no way to live. In addition to that, we do also have some video of the roads, the road to Bakhmut, and this is all after the snow that happened last week. It's apparently starting to melt. This is a BMP-1. You can see just how muddy and how messed up the roads are. I think a lot of this equipment that's on the side of the road just stuck. It's been abandoned, which is not good. I mean, like especially with these Kirpi armored vehicles, you just saw one back there, and they're coming up on two more of these Kirpis. They're very very valuable pieces of military equipment. You can carry a lot of food, ammo, supplies, a lot whole squads of troops. In addition, they typically have a heavy weapon mounted on the top, very useful inside of combat. They're also armored. You can't be losing that many of them, in one spot. I think we saw 3 or maybe even, yeah, it looks like 3 total because there's 2 right there and there's 1 further back in the trees right here. So, very bad, very muddy conditions. Certainly not the type of conditions that you would want to attempt any kind of counterattack in. The only real movement that's going on is probably going on paved roads, and inside of the towns and cities. So inside of Bakhmut itself, which Ukraine probably doesn't have a fully paved way to get in there at the moment. It does look like Ukraine. I would guess. To be fair, we should probably move this back because there is a lot of video footage of Ukrainian armored vehicles traveling down this road here. And traveling down the full distance of it as well, like coming around the turn and traveling down the road. So somehow the Russians are not quite in sight of this road. I'm sure it gets hammered from like mortar activity. I had initially assumed, because we've seen a lot of video of Ukrainian vehicles crossing this bridge that's in this area down here, I'd assumed that the Ukrainians were probably moving through the fields, and coming out onto the road and then going into town. But some of the more recent video I've seen, they're moving down the entire length of this road. So um, at some point they might be taking a shortcut and moving into the mud and the fields and stuff. But at least at the moment they are. Some vehicles are using this road, which I'm not sure or not whether it's paved. It doesn't appear to be, but I could be wrong. All right, real quick to take a look at the other parts of the front. I already have highlighted for you guys the areas that Russia is attacking in. So, as per typical, Marinka, the area of Avdiivka, Bakhmut, the forests around Kremenna, and then a lot of shelling all over the country. A lot of shelling today. Seems like a pretty extreme day in terms of shelling. There's also a couple other events real quick we want to talk about. FSB, Russian FSB claims to have thwarted an attempted border crossing by a Ukrainian reconnaissance group that was about 20 people strong. That's what they're saying. It seems like Ukraine might be skeptical about it, like saying that it didn't happen or not. Not exactly sure. There was also a pilot uh, from a Ukrainian light plane, and basically this is just like a little Cessna or something that ended up getting. I don't know if he got shot down or he got shot at, and he landed his plane in a field and tried to flee back from Russia to get across the border, and he was caught by Russian border guards. So a couple interesting events going on in the Bryansk region of Russia there. In terms of the Avdiivka area, there is a bit of updates that have been made, and this comes from Syriac Maps. He claims that in some areas around Bakhmutovka, the Russians managed to move up and capture the rail line. So, like essentially in this area right here, there was some kind of advance. It's marginal, but the rail line is an important position for the Russians, while at the same time Ukraine made a counterattack of their own and captured some territory in the area of Novoselivka. I'm not exactly sure where this was, but it was plotted out as being a larger chunk of territory than what the Russians ended up capturing. So we'll go ahead and say something like this. Just, you know, keep in mind we're not exactly sure of what's going on here. I'll try to get some mapping update. Actually, I think this is something that ISW map reported on. They have a very different map here than I do. I think this gives a little too much ground in the area of Novogorodsk, but which I believe this town is actually this is actually New York now. Is what they call it. So yeah, I'm gonna have to like do some research and look at some mapping sources before I do anything definitive here, because this is entirely different from what I have mapped out in this region. Also, just real quick, zooming in, and see this map is just completely inaccurate. They're claiming that Russia has significant territory beyond the rail line. Actually, in terms of this ISW map, they claim the same thing. It looks like ISW is claiming this based on the live UA map, saying that it's Russian sourcing, but this isn't. None of this is true. I haven't seen any Russian mapping that suggests they think they control this area. So it's very much similar to what the pink is marked here, just like slightly more generous, I guess you can say. And the Russians believe they control Kamyanka, which is probably under there's probably a bit of contention there. Very possible that Ukraine counterattacked and has re-entered the town. So in terms of the rest of the front line, we don't have any specific news to update you guys on. No specific changes in the front line, just the changes inside of Bakhmut. Russia continues to make progress there. Ukraine certainly is reinforcing its front lines and is making small local counterattacks in several places. We'll see if they come to anything. We'll see if Ukraine manages to scrape together some kind of offensive to change the current situation. Until then, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.